extend a hearty welcome to all the scholars, professors, and senior professors of philosophy of our country and abroad to be with us on this special webinar in order to pay our deep homage to Professor S.R. Bhatt, who has a great contribution to philosophy, not only to for our country but abroad, who is internationally reputed for his stalwartship in philosophy and wisdom. And today we all are here in order to extend our homage to Professor S.R. Bhatt. And you know, the contribution of Professor S.R. Bhatt in Indian philosophy, Western philosophy, and other disciplines. I do not want to explore all the things. The senior professors are with us to extend their speech in order to pay their tribute to late Professor S.R. Bhatt. I welcome all the teachers of philosophy. I welcome our convener, Dr. Pramod Kumar Das, Dr. K. Omnar Rao, to be with us. And according to the decision, Professor Roma Wani will preside over this condolence meeting. May I request Professor Roma Wani Madam to preside over this session, and she will request and welcome as Professor Apanid Selvam Sir and other professors to pay their deep homage to Professor S.R. Bhatt. But before that, we have to we have to be we have to pay our homage to Professor S.R. Bhatt through 2 minutes silence. Then Professor Roma Wani Madam will preside over the session. Start. Over. Thanks so much. Hello? Yes, 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 yes. Okay. Now it's my pride privilege to invite Professor Roma Wani Madam to preside over this special webinar on Professor S.R. Bhatt, and we extend our gratitude to all the senior professors of our country to be with us on this special webinar. And today, our special speaker is Professor S. Aponit Sir, the senior most teacher of philosophy, was a great contribution to our country and to abroad. Now, with this, I welcome Madam Professor Romawani to preside over the session. Over to Madam Romawani.
Namaskar. Condolence meetings are always moments that drive ourselves, our souls, to think of what really is. And as I address all of you who are with us this evening, I can only fold my hands. And during the prayer also, I thought the best I can do is to pray for the peace of the divine departed soul of Professor Bhatt. As I see on the screen, we're about 34 of us. Therefore, I know each of us could say so much about Dr. Bhatt. And I know I am expected to be calling on each of you. But I thought I should be guided by you. All of the members who are here today could actually take the initiative, and if they put up their hand, then it would be easier for me to introduce you for your prayers, your memories, your thoughts, and your compliments, your gratitudes, maybe memories that you've had if you've known Professor Bhatt. So I hope you will help me that way. And as we here say for the departed souls, Om Shanti, Om, for becoming part of that spiritual light, and Shanti, for peace. Peace to those who move in their physical bodies, and peace to the divine departed souls also. Professor Pramod Dasji, may I call upon you to say a few words and give occasion to give moments to our other participants to, if they put up their hand, then it'll be easy for me to call upon them. Thank you so much.
Yeah. But prior to that, we'll ask Sampong to offer Buddhist prayer. Then we'll ask Honorable Professor William speak. Then I'll also introduce Professor S.R. Bhatt and his contribution. Then we'll offer our salutation.
Thank you so much, Panish Salwansa.
This is okay, Madam Pramodji? Yeah, please. Sampong, are you there? Yes.
Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now? Can you
Yes,
hear me
yes, yes, yes. We can hear.
now? Okay, good. So regarding Buddhist traditions, when the people pass away,
Please introduce yourself, Sampong. Sampong, please introduce yourself.
So I'm assistant professor of Mahasompong Kunakalo of Unjo. So now I am professor at Mahachula Vijayalaya University or Buddhist University in Thailand. So actually in Thailand, only 2 Buddhist universities. Now I am vice director for International Buddhist Study College, affiliated to MCU or Buddhist Mahachula Vijayalaya University. Actually, I complete master degree in philosophy at MCC Malas Christian College and PhD with Professor Panisabam at Madras universities. So I finished in 2014. So now I'm working at the International Buddhist Study College affiliated to Chulalongkorn Rajvijayalaya University in Thailand. Respond for international students from across the world. I have so many students, almost 300 students studying with us at International Buddhist Study College. That's me, sir.
Yeah, please offer the prayer.
During the prayer, please educate you on to keep in silent and recall the Professor Bhatt's phrase. Then we have to recall this because during the praying, that means this prayer for Professor Bhatt. So please educate you to keep in silent and try to recall the Professor Bhatt's phrase. Okay, I will start. Atasime akasime yati mita saka jame peta nang ta kinang kacha pupe kata mano salang nahilunang wa soko wa yawan ya parite wana natang peta namataya ewang titantiya tayo ayanta kota kinatina Sangkam hisupati tita ti kalatang hitaya sakana so upaka patiso yati tamo cha ayang mita sito peta na pucha jakata ulala palan chapiku namanu patinang tumhe hipunyang pasutang anapakante pawatu sa pamangkalang lakantu sa patewata Sapa putra nupawe nasata soti pawantu te pawatu sapa mangkalang latantu sapa tewata sapa dhamma nupawe nasata soti pawantu te pawatu sapa mangkalang latantu sapa tewata sapa sangkanu pawe nasata soti pawantu te. This staying means when the beloved one passed away. So then we recall, especially the moment we stay together with those who passed away. So when we recall those who passed away, we should not cry, we should not sorrow, because to cry and to sorrow is useless for those who passed away. Because to cry and to sorrow, those who passed away doesn't know about it because who passed away already. But the only thing we can do that we dedicate something to those who passed away, especially praying. And in Buddhist traditions, we offer the object for puja for Buddhist monks to pray for those who passed away. And also, praying also to give the moral support for all of us because we lost. So this is praying only for those who pass away, but for all of us also. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Somphak. Really grateful. And maybe invite Professor William Sweet to say a few words.
Great. Thank you very much. And I would like to begin by thanking Professor Penner-Selvum for giving me the opportunity to say a few words in honor of our late colleague and friend, Professor S.R. Bhatt. I would also like to thank all of you as well. I was very deeply saddened by hearing of his passing, as my research in and about Indian philosophy has always been associated with his presence. So I offer his family and friends my deepest sympathy. I first met Professor Bhatt about 30 years ago at the World Philosophers Meet in Pune in 1996. I had been invited to India by the late Professor S.S. Barlingay, and Professor Bhatt was a vice president of that World Philosophers Meet. Over the years, during my many trips and research stays in India, but also abroad, Professor Bhatt and I met often. For example, at the Indian Philosophical Congress in New Delhi in 2001, the World Congress in Seoul, Korea in 2008, the Conference on Dharma Dhamma in Sanchi and Bhopal in 2014, and in the session on Indian perspectives on philosophy, culture, and civil society that was held as part of the World Congress in Beijing in 2018. He was a close friend and colleague also of the late Professor George MacLean. And Professor Bhatt served as a member of the Board of Advisors and also as a regional coordinator of the Council for Research in Values and Philosophy, a council for which I am a vice president. In this role, Professor Bhatt was invaluable in collaborating with many of the seminars and conferences co-organized with the RVP in India. Of course, Professor Bhatt contributed enormously to philosophy in India. Trained as a Sanskrit scholar, he made many academic contributions in and beyond that field, including works in social and political philosophy, epistemology, logic, and value theory. And I just mentioned here a book that came out just 2 years ago, which has a number of the papers from 2013, entitled Philosophy Re-engaging Cultures and Ways of Life. Professor Bhatt had a very important paper in this called Philosophy as a Faith and Way of Life. I think that's really quite appropriate given our time here today. Of course, Professor Bhatt was also an administrator as head of the Department of Philosophy at the University of Delhi and as chairman of the ICPR and the IPC. And I'm very grateful to him and to all the ICPR, but especially to him for the approval of my appointment as an ICPR visiting professor. Professor Bhatt, and I have to admit that even though we were colleagues, I always called him Professor Bhatt, led a life full of service to philosophy, to India, to his colleagues, his students, his friends, and his family. He is already very gratefully missed. And I would say that, I wish I could stay with you for the rest of this session, but I've just arrived from Italy and I have another appointment coming. But remember, I hope to hear more from the various contributions of you scholars later on. So thank you very much. And again, you will be greatly missed. Thank you.
Dr. Kailash Chandra, may I say thank you to Professor William Sweet. You've very kindly introduced me personally to your association with Professor Bhatt, and it looks like it's been a very, very long journey. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Very kind of you. May I now call upon Professor Shakuntala Boraji to tell us about her association with Professor Bhatt.
I am Shakuntala, and I'm teaching in Department of Philosophy, Guwahati University. And good evening, Ma'am Chairperson. And I thank Professor Paneerselvam for inviting me and asking me to share my experience and my thoughts about Professor Bhatt. We all who have gathered here know Professor Bhatt's scholarship and achievements. I met Sir for the first time in February 2015 in Shillong, Meghalaya, in a seminar held at Nehu campus, the Center for Studies in Civilization. The events that happened in my philosophical life after meeting him made me aware of things about Sir, which forever will remain in my mind and heart. For the year 2017-2018, I was selected by ICPR as a visiting professor Indian, and I knew that it was Professor S.R. Bhatt, due to whose proposal I was selected. And Sir never uttered a word about it. And since then, certain invitations to seminars, conferences, which I received, I knew were due to his recommendations. But I was unknown to him, that he listened to a young student of philosophy and thought of recommending her book of a generous heart. The occasions in which I heard Sir talking His love for and conviction in Indian philosophy were palpable. It is my feeling that for Sir, it had been his knowledge, or what we call darshana, that made him has eyes to see things that others could not, and have a heart that could bring significance to others' lives. I will miss Sir, and I believe we all will, for we have been basking in the light of his knowledge. I have been touched and influenced by what he once said. We cannot make truth or good, for that which is truth and good. All we can do is to correct the faults that we have created and cease bringing the faults. The light that brightened the lives of so many does not come except in the physical form we have known. I believe that Sir's soul will find, and I pray that it finds its ultimate abode. I have my deepest condolence to the members of the family for loss of such a wonderful person. Namaskar.
Amen to your prayer, Shakuntala ji. Amen. And I literally felt like a student grasping your emotions that you, Dr. Kailash Chandra, I hope you won't mind. I'm supposed to be presiding, but I'm also getting very emotional listening to the speakers. So, Dr. Kailash Chandra, in case you want to add, please do.
Ma'am, I will extend my vote of thanks at the end.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ma'am.
And
Pramod ji,
now
can I
maybe
just-
call on Satyan, Professor Satyendra Kumar ji. His hand is up.
सभी को नमस्ते. My greetings to all. My heartful condolence for Bhatt sir, because it seemed that I have lost my. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you are audible.
It seemed that I have lost my father. The first interaction with Bhatt sir, I still remember. That is that is something very appealing for me. Once morning in Bhopal, during a morning walk, I asked Bhatt sir, what is the specialty of Sri Aurobindo Ghosh, Swami Vivekanand, or Subhash Chandra Bose? His answer, just you can say, just create something very immense effect in my mind. That is his answer that these people have a tremendous combination of intelligence, integrity, and courage. And after that, at so many occasions, I have opportunity to meet, interact, Bhatt sir, his interpretations of dharma in three ways, like a regulator, sustainer, and a reformer, is very appealing for me, and that I have not read in any other book these three interpretations. Okay. I have read somewhere that leadership is not a license to do less, it is a responsibility to do more. And this is equally applicable to S.R. Bhatt sir. I have very high regards for him. And during my visit to Beijing, I have noticed that despite having a very VIP category passport, he is standing with us in queue like an ordinary citizen. It is something that is he does not believe in that VIP culture. That is, he is not working just like chairman of ICPR. He was working like as our guardian in that. So many things that is, as I mentioned in the starting, his affection to his student, to his colleague, is like fatherly affection to his children. his interpretation of spirituality, Indian religion, his concern for environment. I once asked Bhatt sir, why do you use handkerchief and you don't use tissue paper? He replied, smiling, that this is a way we can do something for the protection of environment. I asked how, sir. He said that yes, handkerchief it can be used many times. Just washing, it will take hardly in a country like India. It will be clear within 10 to 15 minutes. Tissue paper, it promotes the culture of use and waste, yeah, use and throw. These things are very small, and apart from philosophical insight that I have learned from him, so many things I have learned which are very essential for the betterment of humanity, which are very important that as a young learner I can emulate from him. Uh, this is something very moving part of my life when I realized that I have lost my father again. Okay, my prayer and namaste to all.
Thank you, Professor Satyendraji. I know you're feeling emotional because your father figure is no more with us. But my takeaway from your memories is that the greater a person is, the more ordinary is his behavior. Thank you so much. May I call upon Professor Asha Mukherjee to share her thoughts with us and prayers with us.
Yes. Um, Thank you so much, Professor Paneer Selvam to invite me to say a few words at this sad occasion. Um, I may be little long, but if I'm allowed to, please.
Please,
Let
Ashaji,
me
please.
yeah, okay. Let me actually start with my own experiences. I met Professor Bhatt for the first time at Delhi University in 1977 when I had just started my MPhil course at Rajasthan University. Professor Dayakrishna had asked two of us to join UGC-sponsored National Seminar of Pandits of the country. Professor R.C. Pandya was the head of the department, and Professor S.R. Bhatt was probably just joined the philosophy department of Delhi University, who was earlier at Buddhist studies. His style of speaking was, as a very learned Buddhist scholar with textual and deep knowledge, was very striking. He would begin with smile, glittering eyes, involving his all the body expressions. The listener will have to pay the whole attention to understand and follow his line of arguments. He was a compulsive and perfect teacher. I have been meeting him since then, off and on, in various national and international seminars. Most of you have shared your views, experiences, and valuable contributions to Indian philosophy of Professor Bhatt, and I would not repeat them here. But I would share a few words about his knowledge about symbolic logic, classical logic, and non-classical logics that most of the people are not aware of. It was in 2004 when I appeared for my CAS interview for post of a professor. He was in the interview committee as a president's nominee. The other experts were Professor Shivjivan Bhattacharya, the well-known logicians of the country, and a lady from Jadavpur University. The then Vice Chancellor of Vishwabharati uh, asked me, Professor Bhatt, to start the interview, and he took lead, asking me to explain my journey from Western logic with Professor Vishwambar Pahi in Jaipur and analytic philosophy at Rajasthan University to applied ethics and gender studies, etc. I explained him in detail my engagement with imperative logic, deontic logic, and moral reasoning at my doctoral and postdoctoral level as a Fulbright Fellow at US, and how my exposure in US with Professor Neri Hector Castenda with his works relates tense logic, epistemic logic, and relational logics with action. Relating every aspect of life experience compelled me to take our daily actions seriously and to analyze them logically. I was referring to all the works of Jaco Hintica, R.M. Hare, A.N. Pryor, Nicholas Drescher, Conrict, and many others, and he asked me deep questions about the literature and their work to my great surprise. He was quite aware of all these works, and he could immediately relate to what I was saying. His training in analytic philosophy was quite substantial, and he asked many pertinent questions. It was not just me, but also Professor Shivjun Bhattacharya and the other two selection committee experts witnessed the whole interview for about 1.5 hours, and at the end, no other member asked any question. Everyone seemed quite satisfied and thanked me. The other point that I would also make about his remarkable capacity to have a dialogue across boundaries, about which Professor William Sweet has already talked about to a certain extent. Professors, Western and Asian at large, spiritualists, logicians, young and senior scholars. We have heard just now a very young scholar from Guwahati University, and senior scholars from any discipline, and laymen. He organized Nakamura International Conference with Japan Foundation, research in value seminars in Delhi, RVP seminars in Washington, and close association with Father George Maclean, about whom we have heard from Professor William Sweet. He was on the advisory committee, which fortunately I also have the same kind of status I share with him. So research and value seminars in Delhi, RVP seminars in Washington, with close association with Father Maclean, Korea, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, and many other Buddhist countries. Beside his scholarly contributions, his ability to build institutions with a vision was remarkable. As chairperson ICPR, he was extremely successful. He provided leadership when the IPC was facing a crisis and was split into two. He united the ICP, Paneerselvam ji knows very well, in the academic and national interest, and made sure that it remains connected with the rest of the world as representing the oldest civilization. One may not agree with his ideas and vision, but he made sure that as a responsible professor, and I mean it, as a responsible professor, a philosopher, he would listen to other voices and take them seriously, and often responded. The last time I met him was in December 2023 in Bhubaneswar. Quite fragile. We did not get much time to talk. Professor Bhatt is no more with us, but his presence would always be felt and remembered by each of us who came in close contact. His lifelong work and dedication to Indian philosophy will always be remembered. May God give peace to his Atman and to bear the loss to his family, especially to his wife, Bhabiji, who always followed him everywhere he went like a shadow, and his two sons. My deepest condolences. Thank you.
Ameen, Ameen.
Namaskar. Namaskar.
Thank you, Ashaji. Yes, knowledge and love, if they are borderless, then we have human beings like Professor S.R. Bhatt.
Yes.
Thank you
Yes.
so much,
Yes.
Ashaji. May I request Professor
Thank
Ajit
you.
Kumarji to now address us with his thoughts?
मैं प्रोफेसर अजीत कुमार ठाकुर मुंगेर यूनिवर्सिटी डीन ऑफ ह्यूमैनिटीज प्रिंसिपल्स बीआर एंड कॉलेज मुंगेर प्रोफेसर भट्ट की मैं आत्मा को शांति के लिए करके मैं ओम शांति का स्वरूप है। इन्होंने लोगों ने बहुत बड़ा एक उपलब्धि मुझे मिली थी उनसे, इसके लिए मुझे सत सत प्रणाम। ओम शांति, ओम शांति।
प्रोफेसर साहब, आप और कुछ बताएंगे हमें? प्रोफेसर अजीत कुमार जी, आप और कुछ बताएंगे हमें?
जी नहीं मैम।
थैंक यू। नमस्कार। आपकी
नमस्कार।
दुआएं हम सबके साथ जरूर उस पवित्र आत्मा को Shanti ही देंगी. Om Shanti. May I please request Professor Hoffman to talk about his experiences? Professor Frank Hoffman, sir. Professor Frank Hoffman, sir. Kindly unmute. Maybe Professor Frank Hoffman, can you hear us, sir? We are waiting to listen to you, sir.
Yes. Oh, well, thank you so much. I had temporary microphone problem. It's kind of you. I'm grateful for my colleague, Framaha Sampong Kunakaro, for telling me and encouraging me to come to this event. I also teach at IBSC, part of Mahachulalongkorn Rajavidyalaya University in Thailand. And my knowledge of S.R. Bhatt, Professor Bhatt, is through his words, his writing, his amazing philosophical ability. In 2003, Ramakrishna Puliganla got a festschrift from Professor Mishra, Godabarisha Mishra, and I. And on that occasion, Professor Bhatt graciously gave us a wonderful article on Indian spirituality. Today I opened that and I was so moved by his clarity. I just wanted to be here to thank you all for supporting him. He certainly deserved it in his time, and in reverence for his family and his close friends. I have nothing more to say except that I'm grateful to be here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Just being in these meetings, you know, it's a two-way affair. We send our prayers and we receive our blessings. Thank you, Professor Hoffman, for being with us. Really touched, sir, for your time you have given us. Thank you, sir. Professor Panir Selvan, would you like to talk? Because your hand is up, but you're also reading the paper. So would you like to address us now? Otherwise, Professor Professor Prasad is on the line.
You're muted, sir.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Professor Panir Selvam and dear friends, I know Professor Bhatt from the past over 30 years, and I was fortunate to see him in the last IPC session held at Bhubaneswar. There I met him, and he was very frail and weak, and I was shocked to see him because he has come down his weight. However, he could be able to spend some time to talk with me, to inquire about my work and others. And I was fortunate to see him in Bhubaneswar IPC conference. When I worked in Sri Venkateswara University, Tirupati, Professor Bhatt came there on several occasions. And also when I worked as the director of Gandhian Studies at Geetham University, Professor Bhatt came to Geetham University on the invitation of Professor Ramakrishna Rao, and he has delivered some couple of lectures there. See, Professor Bhatt, I found in him a greatest talent. He is a great teacher and a great analyzer of philosophical concepts. Even without a piece of paper in his hand, even without notes, he used to give extempore lectures on philosophical concepts. And he drives his readers to his point. And I like the style of his he delivers his lectures. I had a great fascination to Professor Bhatt. One of his important, there are several works he has written as in Buddhism, Jainism, and epistemology, and on several occasions, on several subjects, he has delivered several talks. However, I was attracted by his lecture and also his talks on Indian mode of philosophizing, holistic and integral approach. He says he was a fascinating speaker on Indian tradition, a culture, and how the Indian philosophy, it makes a man holistic. A holistic way of thinking and a holistic way of living are necessary, according to Professor Bhatt, and this is offered by Indian philosophy and tradition. This is the point that Professor Bhatt has said in many of his essays. He has written beautiful essays on the relation between religion and morality. In that essay, he said, morality may lead to your religion, but religion need not always lead to morality, because religion sometimes it will divides people, and it will leads to wars and everything. Therefore, there need not be an intimate relation between religion and morality always. And this is the point he said. And about dharma, artha, kama, mokshas, and referring to them, he says, dharma, Indian philosophy is not does not reject kama and this thing. Out of Chaturveda Purusharthas, dharma is needed. Indian philosophy, it wants artha and kama. It never rejects artha and kama, but it says the artha and kama should be sought after through dharma. And this is what he said. And Indian philosophy is not materialistic. It is material. It rejects materialistic philosophy, but does not reject matter. He says it includes matter, and matter, the spirit should be realized through matter. Like that, he has given so many ideas on Indian philosophy, especially Indian philosophical tradition and culture. It says the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is a family. This idea, it is being generated by Indian tradition and philosophy, and therefore the Indian tradition and philosophy are very significant, and for the whole world. This is how Bhatt speaks upon. And some of his ideas, many of his ideas are, they need to be researched again. The scholars have to work upon and then develop his philosophy in the due course. And that is the way how we could give a tribute to Professor Bhatt. Really, I feel very sorry to listen and to understand how Professor Bhatt is no more now. And however, his ideas published in his books or his papers, and also delivered in his lectures, certainly they will be always fascinating us, and it will lead us for our thinking. And it is a great thought that he has left here. with these few words, thanking Professor Pannisalm again for giving me this opportunity, and also the convener of this meeting. I thank her, and with these few words, once again, I pay homage to Professor Bhatt. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Prasad, for your lovely tribute. I personally do believe with Professor Bhatt that Indian philosophy is the nucleus around which our holistic existence revolves. And once we say that the whole world is a single family, then it means every human being's existence does revolve around the Indian philosophy. Thank you so much, Prasad, sir. And
Thank you,
Dr.
sir.
Namita, may I please request you to give your tribute, please?
Namaste everyone. I am Namita Nimbalkar from Department of Philosophy, University of Mumbai, and I'm here to pay my tribute to Professor Bhatt. As stated by many of my colleagues, I too had the good fortune of meeting him, interacting with him at various forums and platforms. And through these forums and platforms, I could gauge and understand the depth of his thought, which he had on diverse topics. At the various conferences that I have attended, including IPC, as well as in the Department of Philosophy at University of Mumbai, where he was invited to deliver talks and to give the keynote address, what really astounded every one of us was the depth as well as the different dimensions which he would bring to a particular topic. So he wouldn't only be analyzing a particular subject from an epistemological or from a metaphysical point of view, but it would be from diverse backgrounds. And this would give the listener lot of food for thought as well as to contemplate on the diversity of it. So it was in this way that one particular person, but then so many ways of looking at a particular thought. Along with this, I also had the good fortune of interacting with Professor Bhatt during various seminars. And when I last met him at Bhubaneswar, so at that time he was very frail. And though he was frail, yet he took the pains to find out from everyone what they were doing in their academic career, what is the growth in their academic life, what are the publications that we are doing, and what are the new projects that we are working on. So here was a person who till the last breath of his life, we find that he was totally dedicated, a true karma yogi working in the field of philosophy. Not only that, even Professor Bhatt has contributed very, very importantly by bringing out the encyclopedic collection, as Professor Satyendra Kumar has mentioned over here in the chat box. So it's not only through words but also through the written work that Professor Bhatt will continue to live amongst us. And my tribute to him, and may his blessings be there on the philosophy family for years to come. And I thank all of you for your presence over here in remembering of Professor Bhatt. Namaste.
Thank you, Dr. Namita. It's always good to be hearing your, sweet words. And now, especially when we are thinking of Professor Bhatt Saab, thank you. May I call Professor Sarkar to talk to us, please? Professor Tanmaya Sarkar, kindly
Yes, ma'am.
unmute and yes.
Yes. At first, I offer my heartfelt thanks and regards to you for giving me the opportunity to play something about Professor S.R. Bhatt, who was a man of intellect. I got the opportunity to discuss with him about my article last year at Bhubaneswar for the some first time, and my luck, it was for the last time. He gave me some time while he was taking rest. I discussed with him about the philosophy of Acharya Gurunath Sengupta. He expressed his interest on this topic. It is a great loss for all of us, not having him anymore among us. I pray for his spiritual salvation, liberation from worldly bindings, and I offer my condolence for his family and with the philosophy family. This is all. Thank you. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste, Professor Sarkar. Actually, the talk we are waiting for from Professor is scheduled a few minutes later. So if any participant would like to pay some tribute, kindly put up your hand so that, I could introduce you to the rest of us. Okay.
May I?
Shivani, yes.
Yeah.
Shivani,
Yeah.
it's right? Please,
Yeah.
Shivani, Sharma, please come in.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Uh, I fondly remember Professor Bhatt as one of my PhD experts, along with Professor R. Balasubramaniam. And I met him as when I was MA student, and I had an opportunity to present a paper on Swadharma, on the concept of Swadharma, and he was there on the panel. And I still remember his words to, welcoming me as a budding philosopher, young philosopher, to the fraternity of philosophy and the academics. So his encouragement, and as destiny would have that he was an expert in my interview also, and that happened twice, once in Punjabi University Patiala and another time at Punjab University Chandigarh. So I remember him with great memories and great lessons to learn, the kind of zest and spirit he had to pursue, you know, interest for and the good things that could be upheld for Indian tradition, especially Indian philosophical tradition, and promoting textual studies, which I believe that we in our generation and in our own little ways are trying to uphold with our students in our academic circles. And I believe that he was one of the brightest lamps of knowledge that we can look up to. And his spirit, of course, as we all believe and know that his spirit will continue to exist amongst us. And I pray for his peaceful departure and for the next journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Shivani. You have also shared the light of the lamp that led you.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I also now call on Professor Alok Tandon to share his tribute with us?
Thank you very much. I just remember in this IPC Bhubaneswar, when I entered into the hall, he called me just by his fingers, and he was sitting on the front row, and then program was to be started, and he asked me to sit beside himself and said, "Look, we have given your book the prize of the best book of the year," and he blessed me like anything, and it was such an experience for me, because I knew him for the last 20-30 years, but since my area is not of Indian philosophy and his expertise, so I was not I always listened to him, but I could never give my comment or understanding of the depth and the vastness of his scholarship, which others must have shared today. So when he blessed me, and then I thought that once he said that Dr. Tandon is very critical. He was not happy with my comments. He disagreed with me, but he did not say that I am wrong. So this type of humility to accept the other's perspective and accept it as a critical viewpoint, I think this is one of the qualities I saw there. But what I want to say today is his contribution to the profession of the philosophy and for the profession of the philosophers as well as to the philosophy as a whole in his later years. When IPC was divided and two factions were fighting with legal battles, I met him coincidentally in Haridwar when some patch-up was there. And then he said, look, Tandon, you are an outsider, but should we not unite and work together for the philosophy? I said, this is what we all want all over the India, because we have seen that most of the sincere and serious scholars have left IPC. So the way he united, the way he tried to build IPC again and to bring back the old glories of the IPC and to put it in capable hands to run it further for the further glory and progress. I think this is his chief contribution in his later years, and for that he should be remembered, because we have seen many scholars, but this type of social community work is needed, and especially in Indian philosophy, with such a liberal mind, which I just described. So he has lived a long life. He lived a fruitful life. He lived a meaningful life, and we all got inspired from him. And I think as in Mahabharata it is said, the Mahajane Pantha. So we must learn and follow the way he lived his life and lived it for the benefit of all. By heartfelt tribute. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Tandon Saab. Yes, a lot to learn from souls who have visited planet Earth to teach us, in our case, philosophy. Namaskar, Professor Das. May I take this occasion? Thank you for allowing me to preside over this beautiful session of condolence.
Sorry for interruption.
Yes.
Can we allow a few more scholars to speak?
Are there any other hands up?
Yeah, Professor Shyam Kishore, they have not raised their hand, but they agreed to say a few words.
Okay.
Professor Shyam Kishore Singh, I'll
Yes.
call them by
Thank
the
you.
name.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Shyam Kishore ji, with that. Okay. Professor Abha Singh, madam. Professor Abha Singh, madam. Professor Kushum Jain. Hello.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
गुड इवनिंग सर.
गुड इवनिंग.
मैं अभी हम लोग जिस उद्देश्य से यहाँ पे जुड़े हैं वह दुखद है. हमारे एक साथी ने हमारा साथ छोड़ा है, लेकिन यह तो प्रकृति का नियम है, जो आया है वो जाएगा और जाना है. इस कारण बस मेरा उनसे 2-4 बार का मुलाकात है, लेकिन 90 और 91 के में मेरी मुलाकात उनसे दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी में हुई थी. उन्होंने मेरी एक पुस्तक है बौद्ध ध्यान, बुद्धिस्ट मेडिटेशन, उस पे लंबा डिस्कशन उनके साथ हुआ और उन्होंने उसका जो फॉरवर्ड है लिखा था. और मेरे साथ उनका जो इंटरेक्शन हुआ था वो एक सरल, मृदुभाषी, सॉफ्ट स्पोकन, सुलझे हुए व्यक्तित्व के आदमी थे। भगवान इनको अपने शरण में जगह दे और ऊंचे स्थान प्रदान करे, ऐसी हम लोगों की प्रार्थना होगी दिवंगत आत्मा के प्रति। तो वही बौद्ध ध्यान और बुद्धिज्म के उतने बड़े स्कॉलर, किसी दूसरे से मेरा मुलाकात नहीं हुआ। एक भट्ट साहब से और दूसरे प्रोफेसर महेश तिवारी से हुआ था उसी दरमियान, जब मैं अपनी पुस्तक की रचना कर रही थी बुद्धिस्ट मेडिटेशन। उसके बाद लास्ट मुलाकात जो उनसे हुई 2015 में या 16 में, अखिल भारतीय दर्शन परिषद का अधिवेशन था जेडी विमेंस कॉलेज में, उसमें वो आए हुए थे और उसमें उन्होंने यही कहा कि मैडम बहुत देर से इंतजार हो रहा था आपका। हम कि मेरा सर, आप लोग इतने बड़े बड़े लोग आए हुए हैं, ये तो मेरा सौभाग्य है। उस पर बड़े सरल भाव से उन्होंने कहा कि मैडम आप लोगों ने रास्ता बदल दिया है। और उस समय मैं कुलपति के चार्ज में थी मगध विश्वविद्यालय में। तो उन्होंने जो किसी को एक सम्मान दिया जा सकता है, उस तरह से उन्होंने सरल भाव से सम्मानित शब्दों में मेरी मुलाकात हुई। मैं हृदय से उनका आभार व्यक्त करती हूँ उन चीजों के लिए या उनके व्यवहार के लिए, और उनकी आत्मा की शांति के लिए प्रार्थना करती हूँ। धन्यवाद सेल्वम साहब, आपने मुझे अवसर दिया बोलने का, इसके लिए धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू। लक्ष्मीपति जी, लक्ष्मी जी।
यस सर। यस सर।
लक्ष्मी, या प्लीज।
सबको मेरा नमस्कार एंड
नमस्कार।
the day which when I met Professor Bhatt last in the month of March in his residence actually, and on that day he was just coming back from the hospital after a severe lot of tests, and before his arrival I was talking to the family members of Professor Bhatt, and Rajiv ji was also present there. On that day, I thought that maybe his health is deteriorating, and I simply said, "Sir, now time to take care of yourself. You don't move outside," because in last Bhubaneswar IPC when he attended there, at that time also he was not feeling well. But his love to philosophy and his love to participate in each and every IPC session, not only IPC but also any intellectual gathering or academic gathering, that encouraged me to go ahead. And his scholarship and depth of knowledge is just uncomparable.
Yeah.
And being a treasurer of IPC, his blessings is always with me. Blessings is always with IPC, and blessings is always with all the academic committed young teachers as well as academic. All teachers who loves philosophy, and his blessings is always with us. Let us pray the departed soul rest in peace. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Poonam Singh ji, Professor Poonam Singh is there? Okay, she's not there. Then Professor Saji Varghese. Saji, you're there? Okay. Thing is not there. Okay. Yeah, well, please.
Hello.
Yeah. Please.
Good evening. It's a day when we are remembering Professor S.R. Bhatt. I had very little acquaintance with him, direct acquaintance with him, of course. But in our philosophy family, as far as I remember, we had one seminar on Dr. Radhakrishnan's philosophy, and Professor S.R. Bhatt and Professor G.C. Naik. Both of them joined, and there we have deliberated on Radhakrishnan's philosophy to some year. And definitely, this generation of teachers are gradually leaving us, and in the process, what should we say? That we are gradually we are living with certain philosophers of the present time who are not, in my opinion, that much involved in this subject. And I also think that my teacher, Professor Dayakrishna, and Professor S.R. Bhatt, I keep them at the same footing. And I, after his death, I think, what should we say, that may his soul rest in peace in its heavenly abode. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. There is anybody else who would like to pay homage? Please come forward. Yeah, Poonam ji, madam. Poonam Singh, madam. Kushum Jain is there. Poonam Singh ji, madam, please. Unmute. Madam, unmute yourself.
Pranam, sir. This is Tapti Chakravarti, and I received your message so that I can say a few words.
Yeah, please, please.
Yes. My pranams to everyone. I pay my heartfelt, sincere to Professor will be missed always during every academic activities. And the loss of him is felt deeply by the whole philosophy fraternity. He has been an inspiration to all of us. And I'm grateful to God that many a number of times I was blessed with such occasions where I received his appreciation and blessings. I remember I was delivering my talk at the endowment lecture at 93rd session of IPC 2019. And just the moment the lecture was over, I came down from the dais. I remember Professor S.R. Bhatt sir came forward, appreciated and blessed me. That was no less than an award for me. And again, I was invited for Nalanda Dialogues. That was 2017 probably. That was academic discourse on cognition. And there also I was appreciated and blessed by. Such moments are unforgettable and will be ever remembered by me, and that will help me go ahead, and it also with his blessings. I'm thankful to God to be able to touch his feet and receive blessings of such a stalwart of philosophy, that is Reverend Professor S.R. Bhatt sir. Thank you, sir, for your concern, your care. And I know you're in a better place now. We will forever be grateful and thankful to have you with us in academics. And prayers to the Almighty, rest in peace. We can never forget you. My sincere homage to Professor S.R. Bhatt sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Madam, Professor Poonam Singh, you are not audible. Unmute yourself, madam. No. Professor Poonamji, we are not able to hear you.
Could we request Professor Kusum Jain to come in? She's
Yeah.
also waiting.
Yeah, definitely, madam. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, am I audible?
You're audible.
Yeah, namaskar to everybody. And of course, we have lost a stalwart of Indian philosophical community, and this loss is irreparable. The deep insight Professor S.R. Bhatt had into Indian philosophical tradition, it was remarkable. Anybody who would had any discussion with him would get to know that he had worked in almost all the systems of Indian philosophical tradition. Particularly, he was known for his scholarship in the areas of Vedanta, Mimamsa, and Buddhism. Many people have talked about his depth of knowledge in all these areas. But one thing which during my last 35 years of acquaintance with him, and I was really fortunate to have his affection and encouragement always for whatever I was doing. One day I talked to him and I said, you look, you are turning to be a Jain. And he said, why are you saying so? I said, because you are so open to different perspectives, so open that you are, even if anybody is talking about something which is completely opposite to what you have said, you are so open and trying to understand the other perspective, which makes you anekantik, syadvadi, basically. And that's wonderful to have a person of your stature to have that kind of openness and generosity. And he said, I'm thinking of writing a book on Jainism. That was one area where I never, I thought that he would never work in, but he wrote a book, and then he asked me to write the foreword for that book. It was an honor for me, and I told him that you should have foreword by someone else, and he said, no, I want you to write it. And it was such a big opportunity for me, and I could see how he tried to make sense of Jain philosophical tradition from the contemporary perspective, like how the contemporary problems can be addressed from Jain philosophical perspective. And that was so refreshing, because even Jain scholars don't do that normally. And he was trying to make sense of each and every principle which in Jain text, and he was good with we all know that he was very particular about reading original texts, and so he did work on Jain texts also, and it was very impressive. And that another thing which I would like to share, I know there is paucity of time, but he was in true sense a karma yogi. Before, if I was in US for a month when we lost him, and just before leaving for US for those conferences, I talked to him, and because I knew he was not keeping well, and I said that you should take some rest and be take care of your health first, and he said, no, I can't. I have 6 projects, 6 books to complete, which are going to be published, and I have to work. And I said, no, you should take care of your health. And he said, look, I as long as I am working, I am okay. The day I'll stop working, I won't be okay. And that was something which was so inspiring, that a person he was till the end, he was working, he was trying to do something meaningful. And that was another thing which I would like to share, is that he was not simply an academic philosopher or a scholar. He lived a very fulfilled life. The first time when I met him in the University of Rajasthan, he came for a PhD Vaivavosi for one of my students, and he said, "I'm very happy person. I'm satisfied." And I was looking at his face, and I said, "Most of the time we hear people, they have so many complaints in life, they did not get this and they deserved more, and here is a person who is saying, I'm happy, I have got whatever I really wanted to do, and I'm satisfied with in every respect." And that's what I think makes a academic philosopher a spiritual philosopher, spiritual person. When you learn that whatever you are studying as an academic scholar has to transform your personality, and that transformation I could see in him, and that's why I feel he had a very fulfilled life, a very meaningful life, as Alok ji just now said, and that's what we should all aspire for. That's what I take. Mm, I take as his one of the most important teachings from his life is that we should be able to live a meaningful life, uh, a really fulfilling life. If it doesn't happen, then there is no point studying all those um, texts. These texts should really transform us, and I think S.R. Bhatt Sahab has shown us the way. And I'm sorry. I I I hope, and I'm sure he will get his due place, and he will be happy in his heavenly abode as he was happy here. Thank you so much.
Are you okay, Kusumji?
I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yes, I think we all have to be patient, because the inevitable touches all our lives.
It's an irreparable loss. It
Yes,
is.
but what a beautiful tribute. I really wish we follow such divine souls, and learn to live our lives also meaningfully. Thank you, Kusumji. Thank you. Professor Sivanandam sir, would you?
Yeah. Can I? Pramod ji, how much time we can take? Okay, okay. Yeah. 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 If anybody is left out or anybody would like to pay the homage, please join.
Just one
Sir.
request Dr. Paneerselvam to enlighten us about the way in which Professor S.R. Bhatt's Indian way of philosophizing. Because philosophizing, I have worked a lot with Professor Dayakrishna, but Indian way of philosophizing, what actually he means, I have not gone through. So I think Professor Paneerselvam is the right person
Yes, sir.
to
Yes, sir.
enlighten.
Yes, sir. Yes. Yeah. Pramod ji, would you like to say something? Please, sir. Please, sir.
I am really not acquainted so much with the Professor S.R. Bhatt, and there is also no scope for that. But once we had invited him to our Philosophy Family Forum as chief guest to address in a special occasion that was Teachers' Day, and he spoke about Guru Parampara. And while speaking, he said that the real tribute to a teacher is to become a humble student. So that was his greatness, and he was focusing on the learning attitude of a philosopher, of a person, of a research scholar, that everybody should have a learning attitude, and that is the true identity of a philosopher. And his behavior was like that. His character was like that. His personality was like that. He was very humble and simple, very spiritual. We have never talked, but after 6 months, I received a call. Surprisingly, the voice was of Professor S.R. Bhatt, and he said, S.R. Bhatt speaking. He did not say that Professor Bhatt is speaking or Professor S.R. Bhatt is speaking. He simply said, S.R. Bhatt is speaking. Am I speaking to Dr. Das? I was very happy to say yes, sir. Then he told me to share my mail ID, and he said that we shall talk tomorrow. And tomorrow, the next day, he again called me, and he said that you prepare a paper for WPC, which is going to be held on 2024 this year. But one year back, he told me, and I am going Rome, and you will go. So this was very surprising for me because we do not know each other, um, but and also we do not have any talk. But he remembered me and he told me like this. So I believe, as a student of philosophy, if we have good personality, if uh, we have depth of knowledge, then there is a silent vibration between two personalities. Even you do not know each other. That is greatness. That is the great thing about a personality, and that was Professor S.R. Bhatt. I am really happy to uh, be in this occasion, happy in the sense that we are celebrating death as a great philosopher. We have learned it from Nachiketa, from Katha Upanishad. We philosophers can celebrate death very meaningfully, very significantly, and we can understand what is death. Okay, so this is my tribute to Professor S.R. Bhatt, that such a great man, and he was speaking very nicely that if you want to fly high, then you should have minimum luggage with you. If you have heavy luggage, you can't fly high. That means you should have without your ego. Your ego is the luggage that should be minimized so that you can spread yourself. You can your mind can be expanded. This was a great message, and he was so simple, so humble that we adore him, and I pray God to for giving him the peace and eternal happiness. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Panir Selvam for giving me some moments to share my thoughts. Thank you, sir.
Professor Pramod Kumarji, I'll take this moment with folded hands and utter humility to thank you for bestowing upon me the honor of presiding over the condolence meeting for the divine departed soul who lived here under the name of Professor S.R. Bhatt. And I'm also grateful to all the participants who enlightened me with their memories and have given me so much food for thought. May all our prayers be accepted. Amen. May all our prayers be accepted by the spiritual Almighty One, and may the departed soul find its peace. I know, Professor Saab, when you told me to preside, I should have, expressed my thoughts this moment in totality. But then you know me. I spontaneously live by my heart. So if after every speaker I have spoken about what has touched my heart, please excuse me. Thank you so much, all of us. Thank you. I await the paper of
Yeah.
Professor Sivanandam Sir.
First of all, we are grateful to our president today, Professor Romavani, for very nicely conducting this meeting. We are all touched by your way of talking, and after every speech, you could say a few words. It was very, very great, madam, and the philosophy family is very grateful to you. Uh, First of all, I thank the philosophy family for arranging this meeting, a condolence meeting. When we heard the passing away of Professor S.R. Bhatt sir, I requested Professor Pramodji to organize a condolence meeting to pay our tribute to Professor S.R. Bhatt. Then Professor Pramodji said that we'll have it, sir, but you should also speak for 15 or 20 minutes. I agreed. First of all, I am grateful to him for giving me this opportunity to talk and also for kindly accepting my suggestion to have this homage meeting remembering Professor S.R. Bhatt. Professor S.R. Bhatt is a scholar who has given a new dimension to Indian philosophical thinking. This is how I see him. But before examining his philosophical discourse, I'm cautiously using the word examining, because it is very much essential for us to examine or evaluate or critically examine the teachings or the philosophy of a scholar. This is the best way of paying our tribute to the departed soul. But before doing that, I would like to give a brief biography of Professor S.R. Bhatt. Professor Bhatt was 85 years old when he passed away. He was born on 24th April 1939. He was a general president of Indian Philosophical Congress and Akhil Bharatiya Darshan Parishad. And he was also the chairman of ICPR and IPC. He was a retired professor of philosophy from Delhi University. Prior to that, he served in MS University, Baroda. And it is very, very interesting to inform you, because some of you may not aware of that. The ICPR has honored him with the lifetime achievement in philosophy for his contribution to the discipline of philosophy. This is the highest honor which one can receive in this country, and Professor S.R. Bhatt has received this greatest honor from the council. And Professor Bhatt sir is internationally known as an authority in ancient Indian culture, Buddhism, Jainism, and Vedanta. And his research areas include Indian philosophy, logic, epistemology, ethics, value theory, philosophy of education, philosophy of religion, comparative religion, social and political thought, etc. And also, he has delivered lectures in many foreign universities. And he is a member of many board of advisors, and he was also regional coordinator of the Council of Research Values in Philosophy, Washington, D.C., USA, as mentioned by Ashaji and Professor Sweet. And it is interesting to note that Professor Bhatt had organized more than 50 national and international conferences, seminars, and workshops. And he has also conveyed many roundtable and participated in invited sessions in international conferences. In the World Congress of Philosophy held at Seoul, South Korea in 2008, he conveyed 3 roundtables on Buddhism, Jainism, and on Indian philosophical tradition. Later, at the World Congress of Philosophy held at Beijing, he had organized many roundtable on Jainism and the concept of Dharma. In fact, he has authored and edited more than 25 books and more than 200 published research articles. And his publications, some of his publications are very interesting. I would like to mention some of his books. Knowledge, Values and Education, Buddhist Epistemology, the concept of Atman and Paramatman in Indian thought, Vedic wisdom, cultural inheritance and contemporary life, major religions of the world, applied philosophy, value theory and business ethics, Buddhist thought and culture in India and Korea, this edited work, and Buddhist thought and culture in India and Japan, edited work, the glimpses of Buddhist thought and culture, this is also edited volume, and he has also uh, translated the Nyaya Manjari of Jayanta Bhatta in Hindi. And apart from that, he got collected and classified in 8 volumes of all the papers on Buddhism published in Indian antiquary and Indian historical journals. And he was also co-organizer, this was also mentioned by Ashaji, he was also co-organizer of Indo-Japan seminar and influence of Hinduism and Buddhism in Tokyo, Japan in the year 2010. And it is very interesting to note that he has delivered many endowment lectures. His very interesting endowment lectures I would like to mention. One is Ramalinga Reddy Memorial Lectures, which was delivered in the year 1986 in Madras University. That was the first time I had the privilege of discussing with him some of the issues concerning Indian philosophy. Then he also delivered TMP Mahadevan Sachinamurthy Endowment Lecture. Once again, he delivered this in Madras University in the year 1990. And also, his Comparative Religion Lecture delivered in Indian Philosophical Congress is very important. And also, one interesting lecture which he used to mention quite often is Vinodini Memorial Lecture delivered at Vishwabharati Shantiniketan. And he was also very closely associated with many Indian universities and foreign universities. And one thing I must mention here is he was very closely associated with the Vishnu Mohan Foundation. Swami Sri Hari Prasad is closely associated with him, and he has organized many seminars with the support of Professor Bhatt, because Swamiji used to say that without Professor Bhatt, the seminar is incomplete. So his love for Indian philosophy, spirituality, culture, and human values are well known. And it is a fact that he is also familiar with the Western tradition, especially phenomenology of lived experience. And I was quite surprised when Ashaji told me a few days ago that he is very good in symbolic logic also. And he has a very special love for the Tamil classical text Tirukural. And also he was interested in Subramania Bharatiyar and Vallalar. In fact, he had organized number of ICPR seminars on Tirukural, Subramania Bharati and Vallalar. So he has, in fact, was developing a volume on South Indian saints. And one thing which I always appreciate in Professor Bhatt is that he used to encourage young scholars and teachers. Young scholars and teachers go to him for any clarification on Indian philosophical tradition, and he used to give his views of understanding Indian philosophical tradition. And in fact, as a General Secretary of Indian Philosophical Congress, I should mention here that he used to give us the annual theme of the conference. Some of the themes are very interesting. One is a holistic way of life and living. Another is Indian identity and cultural continuity. Then another one, Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam, then plurality of Indian culture. These are some of the annual themes which is assigned to us for us. And also, he had a very close association with late Professor R. Balasubramanian. They were very close friends. Now, with this background, it is very much essential for us to evaluate his views on Indian philosophizing. While talking about Indian philosophical tradition, he used to ask this question: what is the task of philosophy? And why there is no demand for philosophy in colleges and universities? This is a question which he used to quite often. In fact, the ICPR, under his dynamic leadership as chairman, had organized teaching philosophy in India, one national seminar in Lucknow University, and it has to be pointed out here that he is of the view that to a great extent, the philosophers and teachers of philosophy are responsible for the plight of philosophy. And further, he said it should be our task of understanding the true nature and function of philosophy. He is of the view that since we have not properly understood the true nature and functions of philosophy, we are having problems in philosophical discourse. Now, let me say something about his way of understanding the nature of philosophy. And philosophy, according to him, is both the theory and practice, because he is more concerned about what is known as the applied philosophy. And he says that philosophy has self-reflection, self-awareness, and self-realization. These are the three goals of Indian philosophizing. I'll repeat: self-reflection, self-awareness, and self-realization. And he further said these are very essential for human life. And since these are very essential for human life, philosophers should discuss these issues in detail. And also, he said that philosophy is always concerned about the reality within and reality beyond. This is, I would say, this is one of the contribution to Indian philosophical discourse. He said philosophy is concerned with reality within. The reality within is something which is referring to the empirical reality. That is how philosophers have to discuss the reality within. That is the empirical reality. And also he is concerned about the reality without. That is, he is talking about some transcendental philosophy, or perhaps we can say it is something which Indian philosophers have developed, because Indian philosophy, especially in Advaita, we see the empirical aspect and the transcendental aspect of philosophy. Perhaps this is what he was concentrating. He was very much interested in Advaitic understanding of Indian philosophical discourse. And it is quite interesting to note that how he was aware of the Western philosophical tradition. Because in the beginning, I was under the impression that he may not be aware of the Western tradition. But he once told me that he is aware of the 20th century philosophy, especially empiricism and positivism. And also he said that how the analytical philosophy has contributed substantially for the growth of philosophy, and also phenomenology of experience is one area which he has been, I would say, specializing. And but he says this logical analysis or the linguistic approach, though is very essential for philosophical discourse, he said that is not the end of philosophy. So he said that this approach, the analytical approach or the classical approach, is very much essential, but it is a duty of the philosopher to go beyond that. He says philosophy has to do something deeper and more serious. And he says Indian philosophy alone can give the tools for doing that. How? He says philosophy has to address itself to the immanent problems facing the humankind. I think this is something very much essential for us to follow, because he is not talking about something transcendental always. Because the charge against Indian philosophy or Indian philosophy is that they talk about transcendental philosophy, but he is not accepting this view of Indian philosophy or philosophy in general. He says the philosophy has to address itself to the immanent problems facing the humankind. And otherwise, he says philosophy will lose its significance, and it would cease to exist as the queen of all sciences. So he says, in fact, he was asking the question, what is the duty of the 21st century philosopher? He says that in 20th century philosophy, there should be a welcome shift. What is that shift? He says there should be about turn in philosophizing, and philosophy as to be seen from the applied area. That's why he has written 2 or 3 books on applied philosophy. So he said that 21st century has given us a space for understanding the reality, and the shift, he says, has already taken place. And he says this is possible provided we understand the fact that there are problems which has to be addressed by philosophers. And he is also concerned about the goal-oriented nature of philosophy. And he says philosophy as darshana is essentially goal-oriented. And that is why most of the philosophical works in India begin with stating the aims and objective of their composition. A philosophical enterprise, you would say, is not a futile exercise, but a purposeful activity. I'll just take 2 or 3 minutes and then complete. And one area of his interest is experience centrality of life and philosophy. He has been emphasizing this in many of the conferences. In fact, when ICPR had organized one workshop on teaching philosophical methods, he was insisting on this experience centrality of life and philosophy. This shows that experience is something which is common to all, and all our approach should start with this experience. So it gives us the clue that he is not a philosopher who has transcended this empirical world. He's more concerned about human experience. In fact, while defining darshana, he says philosophy as darshana springs from experience. He says it is embedded in experience and gets its culmination in experience. This, I think, is a very, very important aspect which we have to analyze and examine. So he says that it is very much essential for us to start our philosophical discourse from experience, and it must, he says, end in experience. Why? Because it is rooted in experience and it is tied down to experience. So though he was concerned about philosophical tradition in India, he said that experience centrality is the nucleus point which has been emphasized in Indian philosophical tradition, and he is of the view most of the time this aspect is not taken seriously. And also he is of the view, he talks about 3 foundations of doing darshana. One is anubhava, second is yukti, and third is shruti parambara. These are the 3, I'll repeat. Anubhava, yukti, and shruti parambara are the triple foundation of doing darshana in Indian context. And he says no Indian philosophy can be genuine and representative unless all these 3 aspects are taken into account. And finally, he said that, I'm concluding, that's why I'm saying finally, for every school and system, there is a rationale and justification for writing their treatises, and that should be discerned and prominently put forth in writing the history. As the Professor Kusum Jain has rightly pointed out, he was not only interested in Buddhist philosophy, Advaita and Vishishtadvaita. Of course, his fascinate school of thought is Vishishtadvaita philosophy, especially Ramanuja. He was very much interested in Buddhism as well as Jainism. In fact, he had written one very beautiful book on environmental issues in Jainism, which was published by Springer. In fact, Springer sent me his manuscript to me for evaluation. Of course, I am not a competent person to evaluate such a great person's work. But since they asked me to do it, I did it. And it was so fascinating that he could see how Jainism could be related to the Vedic tradition as well as Buddhist tradition. And his knowledge of Jainism is so vast. And that we could see in the last Beijing conference also, because he had organized one roundtable on Jainism where Kusumji also presented her talk, presented a paper. Then two more points with that I'll conclude. He has talked about the practical orientation of philosophy, because he said he always believed, rightly of course, darshana is not mere speculation or brooding. He says it is primarily theoretical and not speculative, and therefore must have a practical orientation. So this, I think, is one of Professor Bhatt's very important contribution, which we have to take into account while discussing his way of philosophizing. And in fact, you would say that philosophy is nothing but it is a culmination of theory and practice, and also knowledge and conduct. And also another very important concept which has fascinated him always is culture embeddedness in philosophy. Culture embeddedness. What does he mean by that? He says to philosophize, which is one of the important human activity, the cultural embeddedness is very much essential. Because he used to say the culture is a complex whole, which is a sum total of knowledge, belief, custom, habits, moral, law, art, science, and technology. So he argued that a value schema evolved and pursued and practiced by a society which is resulted in parambara. He's the one who has always appreciated the tradition. Sometimes I used to have a friendly quarrel. Of course, it is not a quarrel. It is a friendly quarrel with him with regard to his too much attachment to parambara, that is tradition. And he once told me, I remember his words, I just noted down at the time, so I would like to present it. He says in his words, in his own words, a parambara has to be deeply rooted in the past. This is his famous quotation, which he used to say in many meetings. I'll repeat, a parambara has to be deeply rooted in the past, firmly footed in the present, and illuminated by the bright vision of the future. Then only it is a lively parambara. I think most of the time we try to understand parambara or tradition in terms of orthodoxy. And he has corrected me by saying that it is not orthodoxy. And he says in tradition there is always a space or a room for accommodating some changes. This is we have to discuss very seriously, because he says the past, present, and future are all the three are intimately related. When he made the statement in one seminar, I was reminded of Professor George McLean, who used to say, he was also fond of tradition. He used to say that In fact, he has shown, Professor McLean has shown how Shankara and Gadamer, they have some close link with regard to the tradition. Professor McLean would say, like Professor S.R. Bhatt, the past and the present and future are interrelated. So now look at the quotation. Once again, I'll read. A parambara has to be rooted in the past, right? Firmly footed in the present and illuminated by a bright vision of the future. So this is a correct way of understanding tradition. And also, it's also a very important point that he had a unique notion of understanding Indian philosophy. He's the one who was concerned about the holistic and the integral nature of philosophy. He always used to say that philosophy by itself cannot be piecemeal, fragmented, and compartmentalized. By this, he tries to convince us that philosophy is always holistic in nature, an integral perspective which it presents to the entire reality. So this holistic approach and the integral nature of philosophy is something very important for Professor Bhatt. And also, he is of the view that, of course, he used to criticize the Western mode of understanding. And I used to quarrel with him because he was claiming that the analytical philosophy and some of the logical positives, some of the schools of logical positive, they have not contributed, though they contributed to philosophy. They said that is not the proper approach of philosophizing. And in fact, the rigorous analysis which the Westerners have been doing is not fully acceptable. I am using the word, is not fully acceptable to Professor Bhatt. And of course, I don't know, because I have to tell that also. He was critic of Professor Dayakrishna and his approach to philosophical discourse, which some of us did not like. We openly said that, what is wrong in approaching philosophy from his perspective also. But he had a different notion of philosophy. But let it be there, because slowly we will be analyzing his mode of philosophizing in the near future. And let us see how far it is acceptable to us. And to conclude, I would like to state his three important tasks of philosophy. He talks about philosophy has three important tasks. What is that? He says to study the nature and phenomenology of knowledge, and to formulate the norms and criteria of its sources, validity, and truth. This, he said, is the first task of philosophy. And secondly, to ascertain in the light and by the means of instruments and equipment so developed, the nature of reality within, that is human life, without the external world, and beyond supramental reality. And finally, he argued, he would say that this is a final task of philosophy, that in the light and on the basis of the enlightenment so gathered, to develop and formulate for life's guidance the goals or values and the means and modalities to realize the same. These three, according to him, are the three important tasks of philosophy. To conclude, I would like to say, I would like to place him in the scholars of recent Indian philosophy, because I always make this distinction: classical Indian philosophy, contemporary Indian philosophy, and recent Indian philosophy. By recent Indian philosophy, I would place thinkers like Dayakrishna, S.S. Barlinge, Sundararajan, and many others, D.P. Chattopadhyaya and others, Suresh Chandra and others. I would like to place him in the recent Indian philosophical discourse. And his contribution to Indian philosophy, no doubt, is something remarkable. And especially, he's the one who talked about decolonizing Indian philosophical tradition. I think this is a very important aspect which we have to concentrate, because we are always fond of doing Western philosophy. There is nothing wrong in doing philosophy, but sometimes we are over guided by the Western philosophical concepts. And so he would say that it is very much essential for us to go back to our tradition, and it has to be seen how the Western concepts are useful to us. And here I would remind you about Jain Mohanty, B.K. Matilal, and many others who also had a similar view. So it is very much essential for us to depend on our own tradition. This I am very much convinced, because sometimes we depend on the borrowed tradition. And in fact, long back, K.C. Bhattacharya has argued in one of his very beautiful essay published in the Vishwabharati. He said that most of the time we depend on the Western concepts, and we depend on the borrowed ideas. And he also argued that how far these borrowed ideas would help us. So following the path of K.C. Bhattacharya, Dr. Radhakrishnan, and many others, Professor Bhatt also used to say that it is very much essential for us to depend or to base our philosophy on our own tradition. This would help us to decolonize Indian philosophical tradition, because Indian philosophical tradition, unfortunately, has given more space to Western philosophical concept. This, I think, is not acceptable to Professor Bhatt. Of course, this is a very debatable issue, but as I said in the beginning, it is very much essential for us to examine a scholar, critically analyze the contribution made by a philosopher, and that I believe would be a great contribution to the departed soul. So, with this few words, I would like to close. I know that I've taken more time, but because when Das wanted me to say about Professor Bhatt, I was really I was happy, because there is a lot to talk about. There were a lot of disagreement between me and Professor Bhatt, but he always liked me. He loved me so much. And as Professor Alok ji and Professor Asha ji pointed out, he's the one who was what shall I say, took initiative to solve the problems between two philosophical association, and he was very keen. And in fact, he used to say that philosophy community is as such small. So why should we have the quarrel? Why should we have two divisions? So this, and because of his initiative, that we are able to have unity among philosophers. And his greatest contribution is that as a chairman of IPC, he has contributed substantially for the growth of philosophy. And in fact, I must make a mention about that and close. When Professor Balasubramanian, who was our chairman of IPC, passed away, we wanted to give that honor to a great professor who can become the chairman of IPC. So I still remember that took place in Magad University. So I and Professor S.K. Singh talked to Professor Bhatt, and Professor Bhatt was very kind enough to accept our request, because we wanted a great person to lead the IPC. And we were fortunate that he could accept our invitation. And from that time onwards, he gave a new dimension to Indian philosophy and Indian philosophical tradition, and also to IPC. And I assure you that we follow his footpaths very closely, and we pay our tribute and our homage to the great Professor Bhatt sir by following its philosophical discourse, of course, critically. So, with these few words, I would like to thank the organizers, and I'm happy that a large number of scholars have joined. I am grateful to each and every one of you, and I thank you all, and also we are grateful to Professor Romawani ji for making this event a wonderful one by chairing this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sivanandam. Sir, your comprehensive biography of the life and philosophy of Professor S.R. Bhatt is actually, making me to repledge to myself that I shall pick the traditional parampara of India, live it in the present, and allow it to be dominant in my life in the future also. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With this, may I hand over to Dr. Kailash Chandraji. Namaste.
Okay. Thanks so much, Madam Professor Romawani, for giving me the opportunity of proposing vote of thanks. Really, my gratitude goes to Professor Romawani, the way she presided over this condolence meeting on the honor of Professor S.R. Bhatt. Really, Madam's mesmerizing words and sweet words has extended the glory of this webinar, and for way of conducting this seminar has uh, has pleased us, and we are very happy when Professor Panil Selvam, the speaker of today's webinar, the special webinar on the honor of Professor Sarvat, because the way he reflected on the philosophy of Professor Sarvat and the substantial contribution of Professor Bhatt to Indian philosophy, Indian tradition, Indian Indian way of philosophizing, Indian values, and the common classical text. All the things has really motivated us and inspired us to do something for the cause of philosophy. And when we are listening the observation and the condolence words of Professor Roma, starting from his invocation from Professor Roma, Professor William, Professor Sakuntala, Professor Satendra Sir, Professor Asha Madam, Asha Mukherjee Madam, Professor Ajit Sir, Professor Frank, Professor Sambhat Kumar, Professor Prasad, Professor Namita Madam, Professor Tanmay Sharkar, Professor Shivani Sharma, Professor Alok Tandon, Professor Kumari, Professor Anjit Ghosh, Professor Tapati Chakrabarti, Professor Kusumi, Professor Lakshmikant Padi, and all others. That is really their way of experiencing, way of reflection that is in connection with the philosophy of Professor Esharford has really inspired us. And they were reflecting that Professor Esharford was a very open-minded philosopher. Uh, he, his hello, his way of reflection, was very presentative. His love and commitment for the cause of philosophical reflection was very uncomparable. And the loss of Professor Bhatt is a great loss for all of us, for the philosophical fraternity of our country and abroad. And when I was listening to the senior professors of today's webinar, that is when they are sharing their feelings and experiences with Professor Bhatt, that is, it was very, that is, it reflects that how Professor Bhatt had depth of his thought in different seminars, in different sessions of IPC. And I was also witnessing the intellectual gravity of Professor Bhatt when I was attending in different occasions of IPC with my teacher and guide Professor GP Das. I was experiencing all that, and really, Professor Bhatt was a very responsible philosopher, and he has love and commitment for the holistic way of living and Indian mode of philosophizing. And it is also very impressive when Professor Panir Selvam was reflecting the important task of the philosophy, that is in connection with Professor Bhatt regarding that Indian tradition in Bharatiya Parampara, and said that most of us that depend on the Western tradition and with the borrowed ideas, borrowed tradition, or either we should depend on our own culture, own tradition for decolonizing Indian philosophical glory. So thanks so much, Professor Panir Selvam, to share your wisdom, to share the holistic vision of Professor Bhatt with all of us. Thanks so much. Really, we are really grateful to all of you for your benign presence, for the way you extend and ear that is warm words through this meeting, this webinar. Really, we are grateful to all of us. On behalf of Philosophy Family, I propose a hearty vote of thanks to all of you. I extend my gratitude, Professor Pramod Kumar Das, for arranging it, and I request him to wind up this session. Professor Dr. Das.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I shall speak the last sentence. That philosophy believes in pramanans, but this is an occasion we all experience that when we are giving tributes, words of tributes, that does not come under the purview of a pramana, because for whom it is said he is no more. So that is the significance of absence of somebody else. In the absence we pay respect. In the absence also we are connected. So all the credits go to Professor Panir Selvam-ji. He has taken initiation remaining behind the screen, and his initiation inspired me to organize this session. Thank you. We are grateful to all of you. With this session is declared closed. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Pramod.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Selvam. It was a wonderful deliberation, I must say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, all participants.
Okay, pranam, madam.
Please accept my pranams. Thank you.